for everybody. So, all right, let's start from the beginning. So we're here to talk about my name is Matt Sokop. I'm an analyst here with MEPA, representing EEA Secretary Rebecca Tepper. We're here to discuss the Charleswood Elementary School and the Hayden Row street improvements in Hopkinton. The EEA number for this project is 16833. So with a brief overview of the MEPA process, applies to projects that meet or exceed MEPA thresholds and involve state agency action. For this project, according to the EENF, there was the creation of 5 or more acres of impervious area and the generation of 1,000 or more new ADT on roadways providing access to a single location, and the construction of 150 or more new parking spaces at a single location. There were no agency actions listed in the EENF. Local actions were a site plan review with the Hopkinton Planning Board, which was to be filed June this month. Stormwater management plan approval with the Planning Board, Conservation Commission also in June. There was a resource area delineation with the Conservation Commission performed last September 2023. And then this will need an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission as well. And that's a June filing date too as well this year. Other actions regarding the Hayden Row street improvements are stormwater management plan approval with the Conservation Commission. That says to be currently filed concurrently with the NOI applications in September of 2024. And then a notice of intent order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, same date. And then state agency financial assistance includes financial assistance provided by the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA. MEPA requires that state agencies study environmental consequences of their actions and take all feasible measures to avoid, minimize, and mitigate damage to the environment. MEPA review is a process providing the mechanism to achieve this. MEPA is not a permitting process and does not approve or deny projects. MEPA reviews occurs prior to state agency action to ensure agencies evaluate their environmental impact. And the process is initiated in this case by the EENF submittal. At the end of the process, the Secretary will issue a cert that identifies whether the project complies with MEPA or if additional analysis is required. So the purpose of this visit is for me, agency officials, and the public to learn about the project, get a sense of existing conditions, what's proposed, potential impacts, measures that have been taken to avoid or minimize impacts, and mitigation where impacts cannot be avoided. Finally, in addition to public review, there's an opportunity for public comment. Comments for this project will be accepted on before June 21st, 2024, and the certificate will be issued on June 28th, 2024. So before we get started, if I could call today, if we could start with people start stating their name and who they are and who they're representing, that would be great. We could start with any federal, state agencies, and then move on to local officials and members of the public. And then we'll turn it over to the consultants to introduce themselves, give us the rundown on the project, existing conditions, proposed conditions, mitigation. And then if we have questions later on, we can do that. So without further ado, we can start with the roll call. I guess any order, anybody wants to jump in first, any federal, then we'll go state, and then we can just do locals and then the consultants. I suppose we could get into that as well. Any federal? Not hearing any. State?
I can go. Hi, my name is Brianna Weigel. I am an environmental analyst with Mass DEP in their wetlands program.
Oh, hello. Okay, anyone else from state? Okay, any local?
I'm John Graziano. I'm from the Hopkinton Elementary School Building Committee for the Charleswood project. I'm the chair.
Okay, great, thanks.
Tim Person, I'm the Director of Facilities for the Hopkinton Public Schools.
Thanks, Tim.
Carol Kavanaugh.
Oops, sorry, Jeff.
I'm the Superintendent of Schools in Hopkinton.
I'm Kim Charmickley. I'm the conservation agent in Hopkinton.
Susan Rothermick, the Assistant Superintendent, Finance and Operations for Hopkinton Public Schools.
Okay. Anyone else from the local level? All right, and then next we can go into the consultants.
Hi, Matt. I can start us off. Claire Hogebone with LEC Environmental Consultants. We submitted the expanded ENF. Also joining me from LEC is Ann Martin.
Great.
And we could just go in order of Vertex next, and I'll let them pick who goes after them.
Thanks, Claire. I'm Chris Eberly. We're the owner's project manager for the Vertex companies for the town of Hopkinton. With me is Jeff D'Amico and Chris Kenny. Chris Kenny is the senior project manager and Jeff D'Amico is the vice president.
Great.
I'll turn it over to Perkins Eastman.
I'm Dan Colley. I'm the project manager from Perkins Eastman. We're the architect. I believe with me today is Jessica Vavracek, who is working on the project in our office.
What was the last name?
Jessica Vavracek.
How do you spell that?
Vaverchek.
Vaverchek?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And I'm Ryan Dirks, also with Perkins Eastman on the sustainability team.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Have we got everyone?
Ashley Cullen, Traverse Landscape Architects. I'm the landscape architect on the project.
Okay, thanks, Ashley.
This is Vinod Kalikiri with VHB. I'm a transportation planner on the project. And joining me is Greg Russell from our office, who's the senior highway design engineer working on the offsite roadway improvements.
Great, thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Michelle Kajman from Semiotis Consultants, civil engineers, and I'm here with Stephen Powers.
Okay, who did you say you were with?
Steve Powers.
No, the company?
Oh, Semiotis Consultants.
Say that again?
Semiotis Consultants.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, is that everyone? Not hearing anyone, I guess I can turn it over to the consultants to give their presentation on the project.
All right. Thank you, Matt. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We prepared a presentation to go through the project. Can everybody see the screen with the project drawing and title and date and everything?
Yes.
All right, great. I'm going to move along the first slide because we were prepared to go through all the project team members. We just went through that introduction. I believe folks from the Elmwood School Building Committee were also introduced through that process. So what we'll do is go through a discussion of the project history to start. Chris Eberly from Vertex is going to get started on that discussion. Once he concludes that part of the presentation, I'll discuss the existing conditions and give a project overview, followed by Dan Colley and Ryan Dirks from Perkins Eastman to discuss the building architecture and the sustainable design. And then we will finish the presentation with a discussion from Vinod with VHB to go over the Hayden Row Street improvements. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide and pass things off to Chris. Chris, just let me know when you want me to move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Claire. The project is a MSBA sponsored existing school replacement. The existing school, known as the Elmwood School, is at the end of life. It's a 60-year-old building. And as part of being invited into that program, the school did an extensive assessment of the existing facilities, as well as the existing needs within town. In addition to replacing an end-of-life building, the project also serves to address overcrowding that exists in the Hopkinton School District. Currently, the building has 627 students and 96 faculty and staff, and was designed for significantly less than that. As part of the project, we studied not only the building itself, but Perkins Eastman prepared a system-wide study where they looked at the district as a whole and understood where the pressure was on the existing buildings that existed within the system, to understand future expansion that could exist, as well as understanding the effects of the solution to this project and what it would have on overcrowding in the district at large. The result of that was a decision by the school committee to pursue not just the current second and third grade school, but to actually pursue a second, third, and fourth grade school, with the intention of alleviating a significant amount of the existing overcrowding within town by relieving stress on some of the upper schools by pulling those students down. You want to go to the next slide? As an MSBA project, we had to follow their feasibility study, which included multiple stages at both what's called the PDP, ESR, and SD phases of the feasibility study. The PDP is really where we figured out places that were available to put the building, as well as understanding what needs to go in the building. The PSR was really to refine those down to a select few sites and options. And the SD was to examine at the selected site what that building would actually look like. So as part of this, we looked at 44 sites within town through the entirety of the town of Hopkinton. You can see the gray dots here, looked at all neighborhoods that had parcels that could support the school. Ultimately, through an extensive process, we ended up with two main sites, and that was to build at the existing location of the Elmwood School, and also to look at some existing town-owned land adjacent to the Marathon School that exists on that land, on the parcel that was chosen currently. That included assessments of the existing facilities, understanding the growth, a study of educational visioning, a study of the educational programming, as well as what parcels would actually be viable, including looking at some of the realities of those parcels, as well as understanding how they were affected in multiple ways. And the purchase of those parcels, as most of the parcels were privately owned, and so the ASBC would have to pursue ownership of those parcels to consider them. Throughout this, we had some extensive public input through multiple sessions. If you go to the next slide, you can see here each of those green dots represents a community forum, or actually each of those stars represents a community forum that was held throughout the process. We began this process in April of 2022 and continued the feasibility study through November of last year. As part of that study, at each of the stages, we had multiple community forums, including community forums that were advertised to all residents of Hopkinton, speaking before the select board, speaking before other town committees, so that we could get the word out. And ultimately, the funding approval of the project was a town-wide town meeting discussion, as Hopkinton is an open town meeting and a ballot initiative where the town meeting passed it by 72% and the ballot initiative passed by 61%. In the lead up to town meeting, we did have an information session in the Legacy Farms area, which is within the environmental justice community, as well as having a meeting with the environmental justice community just this past March. Both of those and all of our public meetings were recorded by HCAM, the local public television studio, and they're also recording this meeting to make it available to the public in the town of Hopkinton. Those recordings remain available on YouTube and have been viewed since all of those have been viewed since the meeting occurred. We're currently just beyond the design development stage, and we're going to begin local permitting with submissions going in June, as was mentioned, to begin that local permitting process in July. And we expect that combined with the site for the building project, for the building project itself, as well as the roadway improvements, we expect that permitting process to last from July until September. Upon completion of the design and bidding docs in the spring of next year or late winter, we will bid the project once the MEPA permitting process concludes, with a start of construction in July of 2025. And the current intention is to open the building for students in January of 2028. If you go on to the next slide. As part of the feasibility study process, we did look at alternates. All of the discussion occurred in publicly advertised and noticed meetings, or publicly noticed meetings. Not all were advertised. And were open to the public. The ESBC established a criteria of various items that were important to the town for making the decision. And ultimately, the 2 sites that were chosen had multiple schemes developed, both from a base code repair and addition and renovation, new buildings to replace the existing buildings on the existing site, as well as new buildings that would be moved into on the new site. And the various ratings through 2 public meetings were ranked by the committee and verified and voted on to come to the decision. Overwhelmingly, traffic was the largest issue that was cited by the community as part of this process. And it was equally troubling at the existing Elmwood site as well. But the positives of the Elmwood site far outweighed, or of the proposed site far outweighed the original Elmwood site, including challenges fitting all 3 grades into a much smaller site, given the 1,200 students that would be taught by the project. Additionally, as part of this, we had multiple opportunities for both local and visiting audiences to make comments. We did this both at the forums that were held last year, as well as in the EJ forum. We put out a survey, which was included on a mailer that was sent to everyone within the EJ community. And of the survey on that mailer, we received 17 responses that were largely positive. The main negatives that were cited were related to cost or traffic, which we've discussed with the community an extensive amount. Next slide.
I think that gets over to my discussion. Do you have anything else to add, Chris, before?
No, I think
jumping into this?
that sums up the public interaction that we've had.
Great. So just to go over the existing site conditions, the property that the project area landed on is comprised of 7 parcels commonly owned by the town of Hopkinton, just east of Hayden Rose Street here. We have Marathon Elementary School within the northern portion of the site with an existing driveway entrance about 35 feet wide coming off of Hayden Rose Street here. The remainder of the site is largely undeveloped with forested uplands. There is a bordering vegetated wetland just south of the driveway entrance and a few isolated vegetated wetlands along the property boundaries that were all, the boundaries of those resource areas were approved through the ORAD that was issued by the Conservation Commission in September of last year. In this little portion of the site, an existing single-family dwelling that is currently unoccupied is located here that will be demolished to accommodate a secondary site entrance that will be shown on some further slides. The project area also includes the Hayden Rose Street improvements that measures about 1,500 linear feet. There is a bordering vegetated wetland to the north of the driveway here as well. And an intermittent stream flows from that wetland through a culvert underneath Hayden Rose Street. Those particular resource areas were not included in the ORAD, so we will be asking for Conservation Commission to be reviewing those when we submit our notice of intent for the Hayden Rose Street improvements as well. I believe Matt from MEPA went through this very well early on in this presentation before we got started, but just to reiterate, the project is subject to MEPA review because it is receiving financial assistance provided by the MSBA, and that is our form of state agency action. The project itself also exceeds 2 thresholds for an ENF. However, no thresholds for a mandatory EIR were exceeded. The requirement for an EIR is brought upon the project by being located within a 1-mile radius of a designated minority environmental justice community. There are no language thresholds that are located within our 1-mile radius. And within the expanded ENF submittal, LEC performed an assessment of all potential sources of pollution and public health related impacts that the project may bear on the environmental justice community. We identified that the 1-mile designated geographic area does not meet any of the vulnerable health criteria, and concluded that the project is unlikely to bear any unfair or inequitable environmental burden or related public health consequences to that environmental justice community. Now, a brief overview of the project itself. The proponent is proposing to construct Charleswood Elementary School, the building here, measuring 175,000 gross square feet. It'll be 3 stories tall. And I believe Chris brought this up earlier. The school will be serving grades 2 through 4. Grades 2 through 3 will be coming directly from the existing Elmwood Elementary School, and grade 4 will be transferred over from Hopkins Elementary School, which is located across the street, just up the road a bit. The entrance to the new school will be utilizing the existing driveway entrance into Marathon Elementary. That'll be our primary entrance coming in from the northern portion of this site, meeting at this rotary where a secondary entrance is also going to be provided to that portion of the parcel with frontage to Hayden Rose Street, where the existing unoccupied single-family dwelling is. The driveway will then continue east and provides a loop around the school building itself, and also provides access to 199 paved parking spaces. Additionally, there's parking provided, an overflow parking area with pervious surface, so to allow for infiltration and reduce the amount of impervious proposed with the site. We have 60 parking spaces provided here as well. So in total, 259 new parking spaces with the project. We have an athletic field that'll provide space for students to enjoy PE class during school. And then surrounding the building is a robust planting plan to revegetate areas that are not impervious associated with the project. To the rear, we have another recess area and plenty of play space for students, basketball courts, playgrounds, seating areas that are ADA compliant. And I believe that really covers it for the school itself. The Hayden Rose Street improvements, just shown here very graphically from the plan sheet cover, is about 1,535 linear feet of work. I'm going to go into more detail of the school itself for the next few slides. And at the very end, Vinood from VHB will discuss the Hayden Rose Street improvements in a bit more detail. So the project, the Charleswood project area will result in approximately 18 acres of land disturbance following the installation of erosion and sedimentation controls along the limit of work. Those will be comprised of either coir logs, compost socks, and or silt fencing, or a combination thereof. That will essentially demarcate the limit of work, so construction does not go beyond that limit of work, It'll also ensure the protection of down gradient resource areas. The project does not involve any direct impacts to bordering vegetated wetlands or isolated vegetated wetlands. However, the work is proposed within the buffer zone to those resource areas, so we want to ensure the protection of them during construction. I believe Matt touched on the local approvals that we'll need, site plan review with planning board, and an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. The project will also require a NIPDES permit, which requires a stormwater pollution prevention plan, or a SWIP, that will be followed and implemented during construction, again, to ensure the protection of the site and minimize any potential erosion or sedimentation issues. We'll have construction entrances installed, crushed stone at each of these entrances, and temporary sediment basins and diversion swales will be excavated throughout the site to ensure protection and treat stormwater during construction. Utilities, including sewer, water, electrical, and telecommunications, will all be installed subsurface below the secondary site entrance. They will all connect to existing utilities within Hayden Row Street here. And then finally, on this plan sheet, a retaining wall is proposed along the southern driveway loop around the school, and that's in an effort to minimize the amount of grading that is closer to the southern property boundary. Samiotis consultants put together the stormwater management system. They designed this and prepared a stormwater report that accompanied our expanded ENF filing. They preferred a series of test pits on site to evaluate the seasonal high groundwater table and to support this design. And ultimately, the stormwater design includes a series of best management practices, or BMPs, consisting of deep sump catch basins and water quality units, which will be located throughout all of the vehicular impervious areas. That stormwater will all be directed towards 4 subsurface infiltration systems and 3 subsurface detention systems. The building itself, 2/3 of it will be, the roof runoff will be discharged into the subsurface infiltration system number 4 in the bottom right of this image. The remaining 1/3 of building roof runoff will discharge directly into the detention basin that's shown with the yellow label in the very right of the image. That's just to the rear of the building. Additional BMPs include a bioretention cell, or the rain garden that's shown with the purple label to it, just south of the building. It'll also serve as a nice educational component for students. In addition to vegetated filter strips and grass channels throughout other portions of the site. We also have geothermal wells proposed to the very rear of the building that'll connect with the building and provide a heating cooling system that is a part of the sustainable design that Perkins Eastman will be going through shortly. Lastly, the stormwater report that Samiotis prepared, it not only documents compliance with Mass DEP stormwater management standards, it also documents compliance with local standards, which are more strict with regard to, I believe, phosphorus and TSS removal. So the stormwater management system has been designed to mitigate any of that potential water quality issues that might come up with post-construction stormwater management. Traverse Landscape Architects put together a very robust planting plan to revegetate portions of the site that are not comprised of impervious pavement or the building itself. Large trees, small trees, shrubs, and plenty of native flowering perennials will be proposed around parking areas, play areas, and walkways, and any temporarily disturbed areas beyond that landscaping plan will be revegetated with a native seed mix as well. So as part of our analysis for this filing, the project team took a look at the climate change adaptation and the ways the project can mitigate for any potential adverse impacts associated with that. Samiotis prepared or ran this RMAT tool report, and we received the ratings in the top right of this image through that report for various components of the project. Notably, all portions of the project were had an output of high risk for extreme precipitation of urban flooding and extreme heat. So the ways that the project is mitigating for those potential risks with regard to flooding, again, Samiotis put together a very thorough stormwater management plan, stormwater management system for the site that meets all state and local standards. And in regard to extreme heat, the project also includes, like the previous slide indicated, a very robust planting plan. The proposed school itself has been designed to meet Passive House certification and sustainable design, which will address some of the heat index issues within the building itself. Again, geothermal wells proposed behind the school to have a very efficient cooling and heating system within the building. And through proposing the overflow parking spaces with permeable surface, so the project team has designed the project to minimize the amount of paved areas as best we can, and reducing the heat island effect as a result. I believe that's the end of my portion of the slides. I'm going to pass things off to Perkins Eastman to discuss the building and sustainable design.
Sure. We'll just talk a little bit about the architecture of the building, and I'll hand it over to Ryan to talk about the sustainable aspects. The building, as you see in front of you, this is from the Hayden Row side with the classroom wings coming out the back. The front spine, as you will, is the public areas with the gym on the left side, the administration and library in the center core, and then the cafeteria in that side there on the right. The idea being that all the public spaces that can be used or accessed by the public will be in that front, and there'll be the ability to close off the classroom wings in the back. The three wings in the back are 3-story, and they are 3-story for a reason. There's 3 wings, 3 stories, and there are 3 grades. So the idea here is to be able to leave the flexibility to the district to, at any point in time, decide that the building can be organized by grade by wing or by grade by floor. So each one of those is kind of a carbon copy that allows that flexibility so that it will be able to grow and change with the district as we had mentioned earlier. There is growth in this community, and they are always interested in flexibility. The maximum amount of flexibility, and that is what we're trying to provide here. From an aesthetic standpoint, the building is primarily a masonry building. That's really where, and with punched openings, and there's the idea here is for it to be long-lasting materials that'll be low maintenance and will stand the test of time and not need to be maintained by the community. So I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about the sustainability aspects or the passive house design that we are looking to achieve here.
Thanks, Dan. So the building will be utilizing many of the best practices that we have available to us in the design community today, and we'll be performing it as a very sustainable, high-performance building. Starting off, we are pursuing Mass Save Path 1 rebate program. That means the EUI, or energy use intensity, will be less than 25, which is really a good level of performance. We are voluntarily pursuing the opt-in specialized energy code, like we said, under the Passive House pathway. And for those of you that may not be familiar, Passive House is, I would say, is the leading standard in the design industry today for delivering actual energy savings in operating buildings and therefore reduce carbon emissions. So as part of this, we've already reached out to FIAS, which is the certifying body for Passive House. We've done the feasibility study and then are on track for design certification under the Passive House system. And I'd be happy to go into that in more detail if anyone has questions. You can go to the next slide. Some of the design features we use will help us achieve the high energy performance and also really good comfort for all the students and staff. So this starts with the passive design features, like just the way the building, the architecture is designed. Starting with the envelope of the building, we have good amounts of insulation and making sure we're not having any thermal bridges that are kind of causing cold spots. We've primarily oriented the classrooms to face north and south, as Dan showed, which means that they get better quality daylight, helps reduce the electric lighting use, and just make sure that they have a really good classroom environment. We are using triple pane glass and then also sunshades to, again, kind of control those thermal gains. And then finally, we're going to have really robust air sealing as part of that Passive House system to make sure there's no leaks and cold spots in the building as well. And finally, the active systems of the building will ensure that we have really good performance and also low energy bills. So that starts, as Claire mentioned, with the ground source heat pump system, which is going to reduce significantly the amount of energy used for heating and cooling. We also will have efficient lighting, and then we'll be evaluating the installation of PV panels through a PPA agreement as soon as the building is done. And so all of these things will help save energy and improve the comfort of the building. We're also making sure that we have really good materials selected. So we're going to have also air quality that's going to exceed expectations and be a really healthy and welcoming environment for all the students and staff. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Ryan. So that sort of concludes the portion of the discussion on the school. I'm going to pass it off to Vinood for the final slide to talk further about the Hayden Rose Street improvements portion of the project.
Thanks, Claire. So as Chris mentioned early on, traffic was one of those key areas of interest for a lot of residents and people that were involved in tracking the project following the evolution of this overall project and the site selection. The whole process actually is underpinned by considerations related to traffic and parking and circulation, safety, and those kinds of features. So back in July of last year, we went through a very comprehensive transportation study, and that focused not only just on the school, the new school building, and the site access that provides access to the building, but at the school building committee's request, we expanded the scope of the study to cover a very big section of Hayden Rose Street, essentially because the corridor has 4 other existing schools, a middle school, high school, and 2 elementary schools. And then this new building, grades 2, 3, and 4 would be the 5th school on the corridor. So there was definitely a lot of interest to make sure that we look at transportation traffic operations very closely and make sure that we come up with a set of solutions that not only address the impacts of the project, but hopefully through some of the solutions take care of some of the deficiencies that are out there under current conditions. There is no Mass DOT jurisdiction on this project. The site does not abut a state highway. There is no Mass DOT access permit that we need for this project. The improvements, roadway improvements, as well as the school building, obviously, all of the reviews are local, town reviews only. So again, through the process that we went through the year plus leading up to the town meeting vote in November, we developed a comprehensive set of transportation improvement strategies that can work within the existing right-of-way of Hayden Rose Street. The red lines that you see on this graphic here, that represents the right-of-way lines for the roadway. The horizontal lines, I guess, left to right, north being to the left of this graphic. And some of the key elements of this plan that actually helped develop and drive the solution was the fact that we actually have another existing school, the Marathon School, on the property. So rather than create a major access for this new school on Hayden Row Street, what we ended up doing is creating internal cross connections between the existing Marathon School and the new school through the property on site, and then just have a secondary access drive for the new school, which is shown on the right side of this graphic. So the new driveway that will be constructed for this development, for this school project, is going to be a secondary access or a minor access. And the major access would actually be the existing driveway for the Marathon School that you see on the, where the dot is pointing to right now. And we are proposing that intersection be signalized. There was a traffic signal that was considered at that intersection several years ago when the Marathon School was proposed. But back then, the traffic numbers and the justification needed for signalization was not there, just with one school. But with the second school that would go on the same property, and the consolidation of grades, moving of grade 4 from Hopkins School to the new school, we are able to have enough critical mass, if you would, in terms of traffic flow in and out of the site to be able to justify more robust traffic control improvements underpinned by a new traffic signal at that intersection of Marathon School driveway with Hayden Row Street. And one of the key benefits of this, in addition to accommodating the turning traffic into and out of both schools at that signal, is that it creates a fully protected pedestrian crosswalk across Hayden Row Street with push-button actuation. Today, the existing locations where you could do that with the push-button actuated traffic signal is several hundred feet to the north, the Grove Street intersection, and several hundred feet to the south at Chestnut Street. So there isn't really, under existing conditions, a location where traffic can be fully stopped to allow pedestrians to cross. And this solution actually brings that ability to be able to cross pedestrians safely at any time of the day across Hayden Row Street. Also shown on this plan is a widening of Hayden Row Street, again within the existing right-of-way of the roadway along the easterly edge. So that's where the red dot is. The roadway would be widened by about a lane width to be able to create the turning lanes and the queue stacking capacities that are needed for both schools. And it was based on, again, the detailed transportation study that was prepared in accordance with Mass DOT's guidelines for traffic impact assessment. So even though Mass DOT did not have a jurisdiction, we made sure that we followed their guidelines for preparing the study, and the improvements that resulted from that analysis shows that we are able to better accommodate traffic flow for both schools with these improvements than if you were to leave everything as is and have the traffic use the existing access for the Marathon School. Traffic flow today cannot be fully accommodated. The turn lanes often get clogged and spillovers happen when buses stack up in the turn lanes because inadequate storage lanes. And we are hoping to address a lot of those types of issues with the solutions that you see here. And as Claire mentioned, there is a wetland resource area in the northeasterly corner of the roadway improvement limits. So we will be going through the Conservation Commission along with the on-site Conservation Commission review to make sure that all aspects of stormwater management associated with the roadway improvements are handled and reviewed and addressed appropriately as required by the applicable guidelines. Again, these improvements span a total of about a little over 1,500 linear feet of roadway on Hayden Row Street, and everything is subject to the town of Hopkinton's review and jurisdiction. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinood. That concludes our presentation. We appreciate the opportunity to go through this, and all individual team members are present. So if there are any direct questions for more detailed information, we have the team here, so we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks very much. Let's start with any questions from the town. Okay, any questions from any state agencies?
Hi, this is Brianna here from Mass DEP Wetlands. Just want to confirm that there is no riverfront area jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act, because the remote consultation email that went out mentions approximately 14,627 square feet of riverfront area replication.
Thank you for that question. So there is no riverfront area associated with this site. The stream that flows underneath Hayden Row Street is an intermittent stream. It's not mapped on USGS topographic maps, and we ran stream stats to confirm the drainage area. So we did internally confirm that that's intermittent. I believe the riverfront area mitigation description in the notice was not actually associated with this project. So we do not have that as a part of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions from any state agencies? I just have one question on trees. Is there approximate acreage of tree clearing? Was that mentioned in the EENF anywhere?
I don't believe that was specifically called out in the EENF, and I appreciate the question on that. We got the calculations for, I think it's about approximately 18 acres for tree clearing. I have specific square feet if you would prefer that number.
No, 18 acres is good.
Okay.
And then to mitigate that, there was the tree planting plan. Can you sort of break that down a little bit more on how that was developed?
Yeah,
Sarah, I can speak to that if you like. If you want
thank
to pull
you,
up that
Ashley. I was
planting
just
plan
going to ask
quickly.
you to.
Yes, so we understand there is quite a bit of clearing. So we have tried to minimize clearing right to the limit of disturbance, being cognizant of neighbors and maintaining as much existing vegetation as possible. But Claire, if you don't mind pulling up that planting plan, you'll also note there we're revegetating all the roadways with street trees. All the parking lots are receiving shade trees in them. Also, perimeter areas, both for abutters and habitat, we're revegetating with combinations of shade trees, evergreen trees. And this will also be associated with some of the Hayden Row improvements and the entry drives. And then we do have some robust outdoor classrooms in the rear, which will be fully planted with trees, playground area planted with trees around the entire perimeter for both shade and habitat. And I think another good strategy we're using is because we already have lawn spaces in the forms of some flexible field space that are being used for PE and recess. All the spaces in between, we're actually planting with restoration seed mixes, which will be wildflower plantings, again, usable for habitat. They'll be unmowed, really unmaintained. So we think this will be a great tie-in for the school's program, but then also a nicer segue than just maintain lawns for the perimeter of the site. And then another strategy we used was trying to reduce the amount of parking. The required parking was 260 spaces on the site. That felt excessive for this type of school. So we're proposing overflow parking that will be a reinforced turf parking area. So that would be as lawn space as well. And again, that will help mitigate any sort of heat island effect. And then you can also see in here some of the actual tree callouts look a little bit small, but they are all fairly large shade trees that line those entire roadways throughout the entire site.
So when you say large, do you mean when they're planted, they're going to be large, or?
Yeah,
what
we will
size?
actually start them fairly substantial at like a 2.5, 3-inch caliper size to begin with for some of the shade trees like the maples, oaks, that sort of thing. The ornamentals will probably go in a little bit smaller, probably like a 2-inch caliper.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions at this time. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to jump in.
Yep, this is Kim Chair Mickley. So I was just wondering for the team, the improvements to Hayden Row, do those involve direct impacts to BVW or just the buffer zone?
All of the roadway improvements are, yeah, there will be no direct impacts to the wetland resources. The work will be within the buffer zone area.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Perfect. Great. Well, if I could get a copy of the presentation at some point, that would be great. Like I said, I don't have any more questions for now, but if there's anything more, I'll reach out before when I'm drafting up the certificate. Just a reminder to submit comments in writing to me at Matthew, mathew.j.socop@mass.gov, or you can use the MEPA portal, which can be found by searching for MEPA portal on the Mass.gov website. Comments are due on or before June 21st. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
You too.